So Prince of Persia begins as a quest where the prince and his father are leaving Persia to enchant and receive the attention of the Maharaja in a palace in India to receive their daughter as a bride price for the Sultan of Azad. The prince then goes on to make request after request that continually become denied at the objection of the vizier of the palace of the Maharaja, so that in objection, the prince has to deny himself, request the Maharaja's presence, steal three artifacts from the vizier, and escape with Farah, the princess of the Maharaja's palace and the daughter of the Maharaja, in order to return her as a bride price to the Sultan of Azad. The prince then continues on his journey and ushers in to destroy the vizier, kill him, and return the Sands of Time to their rightful owner, which would have been the Maharaja. The prince denies himself, steals the Sands of Time, but they accidentally become shattered, reversing time and allowing for the prince to go on a quest to find the vizier and kill the vizier and return the Sands of Time to the Maharaja. So the story then has a creative expanse of knowledge that the prince receives by narrating his self will and morality to the player with regard to his desire to stop the vizier's evil plan. So then the prince then begins his quest by using an artifact called the Dagger of Time to rewind time and help him on his quest of continuing to destroy the vizier. He decides that he would use the vizier's artifacts to aid him on his quest, denying his father's approval and seeking not his father's approval of finding Farah and bringing her back, falling in love with her instead, and trying to reverse the instantaneous death that the vizier caused at the beginning of the game when the Sands of Time were shattered and the vizier murdered the prince's father. So the prince basically wants to return Farah to the Sultan of Azad meaningfully without denying the request of his father, which is to kill the vizier and return Farah at once. So the prince goes on his way to deciding to fall in love with Farah, rebuking him on his cheek. Farah denies that the prince has potency in this quest and that the Sands of Time were never shattered but were returned to the Maharaja, ideally as soon as the game begins, without them being broken at all. But the prince denies this with his storytelling devices and decides that he would return the Sands of Time to their rightful possession of the Maharaja and return Farah to the Sultan of Zad. The prince doesn't have any qualities that symbolize moral independence. It seems as if he's just a sheep for slaughter because he's just blindly following the advice and will of his father, the king of Persia, uh, whilst trying to recover the Sands of Time that have been broken. So the prince expresses the potency and pain of finding these lost artifacts and the kingdom, the imbalance it causes between him and Farah, so that the prince, through his struggles and through the imagination of his lost heart, gets trapped in his own mind, narrating a story of emphasis and illusion and strength and will of good character, and all the things that this particular character, the Prince of Persia, relies upon to create and develop his moral character and prove that he can accomplish his mission in retrieving the Princess Farah. From walls of illusion that are not only in the prince's mind, but that he follows these illusions within his mind and relives the story of retrieving the sands of time and stopping chaos from occurring from within the Maharaja's palace when the sands of time were opened and destroyed and everything reversed. So the prince is reliving the story of retrieving the sands of time and preventing the Maharaja's conflicting will and opposing will and strength against the prince and his army for trying to capture Farah. The prince, trapped in his halls of optical illusion, seeks the stress and aid of the sands of time to reverse time and prevent his death and continue on, prevent him from absolute death and failure of his mission, regret of not saving the princess. He's trapped in the mad halls of his mind and creates a very interesting story of courage, strength, and honor of the Persian Empire, of which he is the son and heir and ruler and prince and commander. So the honor and truth of him being a begetter and son of a king and being the prince of that country, being a leader full of courage and humility, stress and honor of bearing that civilization's regrets and carrying them forward on a campaign of stress and struggle. So on this campaign of stress and struggle, the prince relies on his regret of being the son of the king of the Persian Empire and travels into the halls of his optical illusion in stress and malady. Of course, he trusts in only his strength and courage of being the most powerful and strong leader and ruler of the Persian Empire and a worthy successor of his father, Shahriman. He continues on into these halls of time and illusion every day, basically, for performing daily activities, whether or not this took a day or 2 days and so on. But with regard to the daily perform of his activities, meaning the utter reliance upon his own physical determination to get him through this campaign that would bring him to the end of his struggle. So constant agony, grief, and stress are ached upon by the prince's feeling for the presence of stress in his life as prince and the son of the king. He looks around, seeing nothing, but above him is the absolute power of a monarchy that is not in conflict, but is struggling because of a prince who does not understand the power of his own authority. The prince, trapped in his mind, echoing through the walls and sands of time, finds nothing in these halls of illusion. But because the prince experiences pure grief and stress and the absolute stress and responsibility of leading an army, leading the Persian army, and completing a quest in the name of the Sultan of Azad, the prince finds many theories and recollections by which he can improve his skills as a leader and a diplomat, called the Prince of Persia. With agony and regret, the prince suffers violence at the hands of hideous monsters that were created by the reversal of the sands of time. So the prince walks through the halls of his optical illusion and suffers violence at the hands of the Maharaja's hideous army. The prince does not fear violence, but will destroy the Maharaja's army of hideous monsters at all costs. To avenge his bloodthirsty campaign, of an undying truce of loyalty between two kingdoms. With agony and regret, the prince suffers violence at the hands of the Maharaja's undead army as he tries to save the princess and bring her back to the Sultan of Azad as an unbreakable truce of loyalty between the Persian Empire and the Indian army. So the vizier breaks this truce and destroys the sands of time, creating a world of illusion, conflict and illusion, and scenarios and puzzles, whereas the prince would have to figure it out as much to return to the palace of the Maharaja and find the princess, and also at the cost of the perplexed mission that the vizier unleashes by destroying the sands of time and creating the army of undead monsters. So the prince destroys these monsters, goes through the puzzles, and advances the quest of finding the princess. Destroying the artifacts at the beginning of the game, the prince then manages to find at least one, called the Dagger of Time, that reverses time and allows him to escape his death and complete his quest without struggle or pain. The prince continues on disallowing himself from finding the fear of his stress and anxiety, builds a good moral character of strength as he relies upon his abilities and the Dagger of Time to help him and aid him on his quest through these halls of optical illusion.